Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Good morning. Welcome to Planning Committee. It is Tuesday, February the 4th, and we are ready to go. Please note to have all your electronic devices switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. So I was feeling a little lonely because we have just a very bare bones group in council chambers today. I have Councillor Pauls, Councillor Kassar, Councillor Taddison, and visiting Councillor Clark. However, I see that I have a lot of colleagues online, so welcome to Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Danko, Councillor Crutch, Councillor Alex Wilson, and Councillor Francis. So let's get this show on the road. As we have quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:31 in the morning. And I think we're going to start off with some announcements. I have Director Dan Smith that wants to make an announcement. Director?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning to committee. Just wanted to share and introduce everybody to Joanna Manganiello. She is our new manager of our rental compliance program. So the Hamilton Apartment Rental Program with the renovation license relocation bylaw and our safe apartments bylaw. So Joanna has started with us this week and will be overseeing the operation of that program.
Yay, welcome Joanna. Very excited to have you. We're all going to ask you lots of questions, I think. So thank you very much for joining us. So let's move on to approval of the agenda. Clerk Kelsey, are there any changes or addendum items to this agenda?
Yes, Chair, we do have some addendum items. Under delegations, 6.1, delegations respecting Minister's zoning order, request for 20 Road West and Airport Employment Growth District lands, item 9.2. We have delegations from Marcus Gagliardi and Sean Ferris. Under items for information, 7.2, this was a report LS 24014A, appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lands located at 1065 Paramount Drive. It was originally listed as 12.2. The report is an open report and has been moved to 7.2, and confidential Appendix A is still listed on the agenda as 12.2. Under public hearings, 8.1, application for zoning bylaw amendments for lands located at 525 Stone Church Road East, added staff presentation and an added written submission. For 8.2, modifications and updates to existing accessory dwelling units. This report is being deferred to the March meeting. 8.3, applications for official plan, zoning bylaw, and draft plan of subdivision for lands located at 228 McNeely Road and 1069 Highway number 8. There's an added staff presentation and added written submissions. And under items for consideration, 9.2, the Minister's zoning order request for 20 Road West and Airport Employment Growth District lands. There's an added staff presentation and written submissions, items 1 to 71.
Oh, that's it, eh? Okay, thanks. All right, may I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda to be approved as presented? Councillor Kassar, Councillor Pauls. Show of hands, please. And that carries, thank you. Declarations of interest, members of committee. Are there any declarations of interest currently? Seeing none, let's move on to approval of minutes from the previous meeting, and that was for January 14th. May I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of January 14th? Councillor Taddison and Councillor Alex Wilson. Yes. Okay, awesome. May I have a show of hands, please? And that's carried. All hands are up. Let's go on to delegations. So before we begin our delegations for today, members are reminded that questions of the delegations are for clarification purposes only, and they are not for debate. And a note to all of our delegates, you have 5 minutes to complete your delegation. You'll hear a tone after the 4-minute mark, and then you will have an additional minute to finish up. So we will start with 6.1, which is delegations respecting the Minister's zoning order request for 20 Road West and Airport Employment Growth District lands. This is in relation to item 9.2. So may I have Marcus Gagliardi come on down to the podium, please?
Sorry, Chair Wang.
Yes.
Sorry, I might have missed it, and I probably should have done this under approval of the agenda. When was this delegation approved? Was this at a previous meeting, or was this did we just approve it under the approval of the agenda?
So we have just approved this under the approval of the agenda. We no longer do these sort of like we don't do the request anymore. So, but I can ask Clerk Kelsey to just clarify for us.
Yes, so under the new procedural bylaw, there are no delegation requests. It's up to the clerk and the chair to decide, and so these delegations were added to the agenda.
Councilor
Okay.
Danko?
So I'm going to put a motion on the floor then to defer this item, if that's procedurally in order, to defer this delegation.
To defer the delegation.
Yes.
Okay, but I think that right now it is 9.1, which is,
Normally, I would have done this under approval of the delegations. So I was not aware that that was changed in the procedural rules of order.
I would ask legal to speak.
Solicitor McDonald, welcome to the hot seat.
Good morning, Patrick McDonald, Legal Services. Through the chair, I don't think legal typically interprets procedural items. Did I misunderstand?
No, it's just more about if the counselor is saying that these delegations shouldn't speak, I was wondering if there's a legal reason that would prevent them from speaking at this meeting.
Through the chair, no, I'm not aware of one.
Okay.
Then if the council wishes to put the motion on the floor, and then committee would vote.
Okay, so Councilor Danko has put a motion to defer this particular delegation or both of the delegates that are on today's agenda?
So if I could speak to the motion, it would be a deferral motion for both of these delegations if I have a seconder, and then I'll speak to it.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councilor Maureen Wilson is seconding. So please continue speaking to this motion, please.
Thank you. So whereas this item is currently under appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and whereas a minister's zoning order is a separate process for approval independent of the current Ontario Land Tribunal, so I'd move that delegation request 6.1 for Marcus Gagliardi and Sean Ferris, respecting the minister's zoning order for 20 Road West and Airport Employment Growth District lands, be deferred to a future meeting of the Planning Committee pending conclusion or withdrawal of the current OLT boundary expansion appeal. And I believe we can speak to a deferral request or a deferral motion. So just very quickly, this is an item that is on the agenda for today. So typically we would allow delegations and encourage delegations. But with the separate process here, the fact that this item is already under appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, I don't think that it is appropriate for us to hear basically a pitch from the applicants while there is an outstanding Ontario Land Tribunal appeal, where if a minister's zoning order was approved, it would basically circumvent that entire process. So a more appropriate process, in my opinion, would be to defer this until the conclusion or withdrawal of the OLT appeal.
Thank you for that. Do we have any speakers to this? Councilor Taddison, please.
I just think that it's a separate issue, and I think that we should hear the delegates who've come in today, and they want to share information. I don't see any issue with sharing that information.
Thank you, Councilor Taddison. Any other speakers to this? Councilor Taddison, could you take the chair for a minute?
I have the chair.
Thank you. Perhaps through you, I'd like to ask Legal Services, because I do know that they are two separate items, OLT and MZO. So I just want to get some clarity. If there is a delegation on, because the delegation is essentially asking council to support the MZO, and that's a completely separate process in my understanding. But the OLT is a completely separate matter. So I just want to get some clarity from you if that is what we're dealing with right now.
Through the chair, yes, those are two separate processes. I understand, and staff can confirm, they deal with a large number of the same lands. There may be specific questions, if they're raised, that may have to be dealt with in camera if they touch on the existing litigation. But generally speaking, anything specifically restricted to the MZO, that is a separate public process. I think that would go through an ERO posting as well. So I hope that offers some clarity.
Yeah, it strikes me that because the MZO so to committee, I feel as though that the MZO is a separate issue. So Chair, I think that, in my opinion, I will vote down this motion in order to hear the delegations as it relates completely to a separate matter.
Chair's back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, please.
I'm not a member of the committee, but might I suggest no one on the committee needs to ask any questions of the delegate. If the delegate wishes to present to the committee can listen, and the committee can then go in camera later in the meeting and ask any questions of legal as to what they heard being presented here. I think it will be challenging if we create a scenario or a narrative that we refuse to hear the delegate and they proceed with the MZO application and the minister hears that council didn't want to hear from them. So I'd exercise caution. I agree with Councillor Danko from the aspect of nobody should be asking a question of them because these matters are before tribunal, before the minister. And so just listen to them and then speak about it in camera.
Okay.
That way it doesn't prejudice our position.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other speakers to this item? Councillor Pauls, please.
Just wondering if it's a separate issue, why couldn't we ask questions for MCO? It's not any litigation. So I think for saying that council cannot ask question, I mean, I think it's.
Asking questions of the delegate is
Of the
just
delegate.
to
That's
be
right.
very crystal clear.
Yeah.
So I will heed that, and I
Not
think
that I'm going to ask question, but I'm just saying, to say we don't ask questions, it's totally separate issue, MZO, we just ruled that.
Yeah.
So I think if there are some question, I think we should ask.
I think that I will listen very carefully to the questions asked, and I'll make a ruling whether it's in line or not in line. Thank you all for the conversation. And again, any other comments or questions? Okay, so this is a decision, so we'll have to have an electronic vote, correct? All right, so it has been moved and seconded, and may I have the vote, please? Vote is up. For Councillor Danko's motion, yes, to defer it to another time. And that vote is defeated. So we will continue moving forward with our delegation. So Mr. Gagliardi, please step up to the podium and you will have 5 minutes. But I understand you have a presentation, so we'll get that queued up for you.
Great. Good morning, committee. Good morning, Chair. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak today. I understand some of the concerns from Councillor Danko with respect to the ongoing appeal. Procedurally, though, it wouldn't make sense for any of the applicant or ourselves, for that matter, to drop an appeal prior to the MZO being issued. It wouldn't make any sense. Procedurally, issuing the MZO would eliminate the OLT process altogether. So anyways, moving into the presentation, the picture that's before you on the screen today is an excerpt from a 2015 settlement between the applicants and the city. At that point in time, the lands were urban. The boxes in gray with number 4 and 6 were already in the urban boundary. I wanted to talk about this first because there's a lot of discussion about urban expansion, urban sprawl, developing outside city limits. This picture paints a clear image for everyone that the lands were inside the urban boundary in 2010. They were in the boundary up until 2015, and they still continue to be surrounded by urban boundary or urban area on all 4 sides respectively. This next image is a prime agricultural map from the OMAFRA mapping system provided by the province. The reason why I wanted to show this map, again, a lot of discussions in some of the emails that we've been receiving with respect to this application, as well as boundary expansions in general. And our particular candidate area, being Upper West Side or 20 Road West, is one of the only candidate areas that is not prime agricultural. It's not designated by the province. And in fact, in the 2015 settlement between the city and the applicants, when it was removed from the urban boundary, the lands were not placed into a prime agricultural designation, which would have mean they would have had to been preserved. They were put into a rural designation, which left the opening, we'll say, to continue to proceed towards development on those lands. If the city wanted them preserved at that time, and that was their position, they would have been designated as prime agricultural at that time, and there would have been no discussion. I want to get into a little bit of the visioning process behind the MZO. And I know I only have a few minutes, but when the city mapped out the original AEGD master plan, and I'll go back to the original slide, you'll notice there's a lot of green missing from this slide. A lot of natural heritage, a lot of tributaries, a lot of wetlands, a lot of wooded areas that are missing from this map. Okay? It makes the developable area of this plan look a lot more than what it actually is. When you actually go out on site and map those areas, stake them, walk them, you look at the green, okay? We use the green as one of the constraints, east-west, okay? Natural heritage feature, east-west. You have natural heritage features running north-south from Dickinson Road. That makes it very challenging to develop employment, okay? It creates irregular shapes, constraints, okay? So we use that as our constraint. You also have residential to the north, 20 Road West, okay? To the north of 20 Road West is entirely residential, okay? NEF line. We've implemented the NEF 30 line from 2025, okay? That's where that line, based on the airport master plan, is today, okay? Any other municipality in Ontario develops up to the NEF 30 line. You do that with warning clauses, you do that with warning provisions, you can even do it with signage throughout the subdivision, warning people that they live close to an airport. Putting all of that aside, we came up with a plan that does have park space. I think the city staff report said there was no parks proposed. There's absolutely parks proposed up to meet the Planning Act. 32 kilometers of natural heritage trails and networks being preserved or enhanced. Stormwater management ponds, 2 school sites, and in addition to all of the residential, which equates to about 5,000 units, we've also earmarked locations for grocery stores and retail amenities for the existing community. And in addition to that, not all of the land is being proposed to be brought into the boundary or converted. There is still purple being left on this map. City staff seem to doubt the fact that there could be 4 million square feet of employment in this plan. We've prepared a plan. The plan before you today, anything outside of the white showing an employment, we'll call it an employment box, those quadrants all add up to 4 million square feet. That includes the Panettone application, which is before you. And if you include the Broccolini application to the south on Dickinson Road, it would actually be more. So there's 4 million square feet in a single-story building. So if you went to 2 stories, there would actually be more. So the notion that there is not 4 million square feet in the plan is incorrect. I want to run out of time. One of the biggest benefits to this plan, and it required all of the landowners in the group agreeing to it, okay? It's not a very easy discussion to have with the big bad developers to put in affordable housing. But we have 500 affordable units proposed in this development, 100 of which are being earmarked to Habitat Hamilton, who's here today to delegate, and the other 400 that will be built either by Habitat or ourselves. If the city wanted to secure that, they could absolutely do it through the zoning application. And I just want to hint on a couple other things.
Wrap up.
$300 million in development charges for the plan, 20 million net revenue every year from property taxes, and again, 500 affordable housing units.
Thank you, Mr. Gagliardi. You do have several speakers that would like to ask you a question. So up now, we have Councillor Taddison, please. Just a reminder, we are
Yes,
getting
you can
clarification.
judge my question if it's going to compromise anything. So even though these lands are currently rural, I think it's been the intent, my understanding is that the city's going to develop these lands at some point. My main concern is for the residents that live in the adult living communities across the street north of 20. These communities, they're serviced by a series of stormwater management ponds, and maintaining and servicing those ponds costs them into the tens of thousands of dollars each year. So their concern is that from construction, any construction, the muddy water runoff will clog and fill their ponds with silt. Do you have any ways of allaying their fears?
So,
Point of
Councillor, I
order,
feel like
Chair.
that's like getting really, really detailed, and I'm going to rule that out of order. So I feel like that's something that perhaps could be asked at a later time. I don't think that that question is in order.
Okay, fair enough. I just, again, raising concerns that I hear on the street from my residents.
Do you have another question, Councillor Taddison?
You say that there's 100 units for affordable housing? I guess what I'm trying to ask, is there any advantage to the city accepting that you could explain?
So we do also have Sean Ferris from Habitat for Humanity as a second delegate. So I believe that would be a better question for
Okay,
Sean Ferris.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing as there are no other speakers, and I'll just pause for dramatic effect. Thank you, Mr. Gagliardi, for your delegation today.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Ferris is here. Come on down, Sean, to the podium. Hi, Sean, welcome.
Good
You have 5
morning.
minutes.
May I begin? Okay, good morning, Chair and Committee. My name is Sean Ferris, and I'm here to represent Habitat for Humanity Hamilton. At Habitat, what we do is we engage the community to build new, safe, decent, and affordable homes for local families who could not otherwise access ownership. In addition, one of the things we do is we repair homes. We partner with local organizations who maybe have uninhabitable homes, sometimes rent geared to income, and City Housing Hamilton is an example of that. It was at one of these repairs, pardon me, where we met the team from Cache. They came out on a couple of corporate build days, activities that we engage in, to help repair a couple of homes with us. And we found that their work was very high quality. They had great expertise, and they were actually community-minded. So we were delighted to work with them. Now, our model is unique. At Habitat, we engage the community through donations of professional services, through donations of product, and through volunteerism. We have students on site every day from the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program. And so when your build model relies on the community engagement, progress is slow. That is why we've been actively pursuing opportunities to engage with builders and developers so that we can serve the community more, build more homes, build them faster, and get more people into home ownership. And as you know, when we create an affordable home ownership opportunity, housing is a continuum. It frees up space for affordable rental housing. So there's a win there too. Pardon me. Now, we've actively been pursuing opportunities for engagement with developers. Just last year, we engaged with New Horizon Development Group for a small build in the beach community, which was a great success. Many of you may remember 10 years ago, John Arians, our former board chair, stood at this podium and petitioned for affordability in the RFP process for Pier 8. And we were delighted that the city decided that 5% of the homes at Pier 8 would be affordable. Fantastic. We really applaud the city's commitment or pursuit of inclusionary zoning. Similarly, when the board examined what Cachet and the Upper West Side had to offer, they found it quite compelling, and we entered into an MOU. It's compelling because of their vision is stronger and inclusive communities with 10% affordability in the development. And that's where Habitat comes in. We're focused on promoting the affordable component of this development. And, you know, it's really important to me because, you know, I think that affordability has to be part of the development process. And in my mind, a developer-led 10% affordability component is unprecedented. So we're really excited about that. Now, having said that, we would not be going on site with students and volunteers to build these homes. There's a model in place in Canada and throughout North America where we can finance homes, turnkey units built by and move folks quickly into home ownership. Habitat wants to be part of this because we can ensure that Hamilton families who couldn't otherwise access home ownership would move into these homes, that these homes would be owner occupied and that they would be kept in affordable housing stock for the long term. So that's our involvement in this build. We're really excited, you know, for the opportunity to partner with developers, and we would really encourage consideration of this particular build for that reason. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean. You do have a speakers list, some people that would like to ask you some questions. Councillor Pattison, please.
So thank you for your delegation. Through your normal process, you say it normally takes years, and then you said this would quicken the process. How quick would that process be, do you anticipate, once building started?
Well, what we've heard from developers is that when they get the ball rolling, you know, a single home could be built in as quick as like 3 or 4 months, whereas we've just finished 5 on Sherman Avenue. It took us 2 years with volunteers and students.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beatty, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Sean, good to see you. This doesn't seem like something that I've seen Habitat really do much of in Hamilton before. It seems like it's a new model for you. Is this a model that other habitats have done? And I'm just asking, Jared, from a curiosity standpoint, something that's done in other jurisdictions that maybe you're going to lean on their expertise to learn a little bit as you go, just a little more as to how this is different than your typical process, because it is intriguing, it is interesting. But I'm just wondering if you could go into a little more depth of the differences between this model and who else in the region might be doing a model like this.
For sure, yeah. It's widespread across the country. It's almost exclusively used by Habitat GTA. As you can imagine, the cost of land in the GTA is much higher, and the more that developers are encouraged or incentivized or arm twisted into including an affordable component, we've got a way to help them along. Essentially what it is instead of a traditional mortgage where Habitat holds the mortgage, we engage with a credit union, and the homes are in effect purchased for and sold for half price. And then equity is restricted on those homes so that if they were to be sold, only a portion of that equity would go to the homeowners and they can remain in affordable housing stock. So yes, we would be leaning on folks who came before us, and we're putting in place, with the support of our board, all of the policies and procedures in order to make it a reality. You know, it's our intent to do that for Pier 8, and we have other applications and efforts on the way where we're planning to employ that as well.
Thank you for the explanation, Sean, and thank you, Chair. I think there was a similar, it wasn't a Habitat program, but there was a similar program that was done in my ward. It was developer-led, that mortgage and the restriction on the equity and such. I remember that taking place, and it seemed to have been a successful model. So I wish you luck on it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pauls, please.
Thank you, Sean. And I think you're right. In order to solve our housing problem, we need to get the developers and the builders involved. And I think that's a great model. Can I ask you a question? In the area of the 20 Road, how many affordable houses would you create if the MZO was given?
Would we create? Under the MOU, we have an agreement for 100. There's an option to continue with an additional 400, but I understand there was discussions with other affordable housing providers and so on. So we locked in at 100, and we're interested in doing more, Marcus. So
Yes, because I think I saw it on Twitter. It said about 500. I got all excited. Wow, 500 homes. So you have a deal for 100 right now, but you could go up to 500.
yeah, 500 would represent 10% of the development.
And that's, you said that's unheard, right?
I've never heard of it. Usually it's 5% as the city has done or less, and usually it's mandated by the city, in my experience, rather than a developer being motivated to just offer it up.
That is a good story, I think, good news story that if we could get affordable housing out there. We're short, we need it. So thank you, and thank you for delegating this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing as there are no other speakers, thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you.
Now, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive both the delegations, please? Councillor Pauls and Councillor Taddison. Show of hands, please. I think, yes, I got everybody. So, all right, that carries. Thank you. We are now moving on to item 7, items for information. So we have 2 items, 7.1. We'll work on 7.1 first before we go on to 7.2. So 7.1 is the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Subcommittee minutes for January 16th, 2025. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive 7.1, please? Councillor Alex Wilson and Councillor Kassar. Any questions, comments, or issues or discussions on 7.1? Okay. Seeing none, may I have a show of hands to receive 7.1, please? I have everyone, so that carries. And so now we are moving on to 7.2. It is for Report LS 24014A, the appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lands located at 1065 Paramount Drive, Stony Creek, for official plan amendment UHOPA 23-005 and zoning bylaw amendment application ZAC 23-009, and this is in Ward 9. And just a reminder to committee, there is a confidential item in 12.2. So I would like to ask committee if they'd like to go into closed for this, and I do see that the ward councillor has asked for it. So what we will do first is we will have any open comments or open questions right now before we go into closed. So I'd like to ask if there are any questions on this item in open currently. I will recognize Councillor Clark, please.
Chair, it would be my respectful request that we would go in camera first and then provide public comments. I do appreciate the work that our legal team has done in separating the issue, the report, I should say, into 2 reports. So there is a public report, and then there is a legal report that we will discuss in camera. So my preference would be to have the odd opportunity to speak after that fact,
Okay.
if that's possible.
All right, thank you, Councillor Clark. I do recognize that Councillor Maureen Wilson has also put herself on the speakers list, so let's go to Councillor Maureen Wilson first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just echoing Councillor Clark's request, that was going to be mine. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I'd like a mover and a seconder to take us into closed, please. Councillor Beatty and Councillor Pauls. Is this procedural, so I just need a show of hands, right? Oh, so we'll start with 21 first? Sorry, excuse me. All right, so we do have a mover and a seconder, Counselor Beatty and Counselor Pauls, to take us into closed session for item 12.2 pursuant to the section 9.3 subsections E and F of the city's procedural bylaw 21-021 as amended, and section 2392 subsections E and F of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. May I have a show of hands, please? Oh, Councillor Crutch would like to speak. Councillor Crutch, please.
My understanding is that this is an item for information and it's to be received. And there's no action being taken here. While we may have questions in camera, I'm not sure why we're going in camera now and deferring this item to after camera, like after the closed session, if it's an item for information. The meeting will not be held up in any way by us waiting until the in-camera session at the end of the meeting and discussing it then and receiving the information. Again, this is just to receive. There's no motion on the table for any action to be taken. I'm confused as to why we're suggesting going into a closed session at this time.
Thank you for that. I had chatted with the clerk about this, and because we also have Councillor Clark that is visiting us, we wanted to try and expedite this particular item as quickly as possible. As well, we do have legal staff that are with us currently. But I also see that Councillor Clark would also like to comment on this.
I'm completely in the committee's hands. I'm happy to wait until later in the agenda when it would normally appear as an in-camera item. Just because it is an information item does not mean that there is not going to have public interest and comments from councillors. But if the the committee wants to wait until later in the meeting or do it now, it's up to you. I'm not going to be offended either way.
Okay. All right, so I will leave it. Councillor Beatty, please.
Sorry, I still have the floor. I know
Sorry.
Councillor Clark wanted to jump in there, which is fine. I'm happy to just say that's fine. I just wanted to know the reason. I didn't understand what was happening here. So if Councillor Clark would like us to just do this as a courtesy, because he's not a committee member, and just to go into private session, there's only this one item, fine with me. Just didn't understand what was happening procedurally and wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crutch. Sorry about that. Councillor Beatty, please.
If it is the will of committee and if Councillor Clark is able to remain here and if there is no objection from legal as to moving this to the regular schedule, I'd withdraw the motion to go into closed now, provided that it works with the timeline of the solicitor.
Okay. Oh, so Clerk has just also mentioned that it is the only closed item as well. So there's, so we would be pushing through all the way. So Solicitor, what's this look like for you?
Through the chair, I have no social plans, so I'm at committee's discretion on when you'd like to do it.
So Chair, with that information, I'll withdraw the current motion and we'll proceed to it closed at the scheduled time.
All right, then. Thank you very much. So the motion to move into closed has been removed. So now, do we defer this to after closed for us to receive this? Yes. Okay. So do I need a motion to actually defer this to after closed then? Yes, I do need a motion. So may I have a mover and a seconder to defer 7.2 to after closed? I have Councillor Pauls and Councillor Taddison. And may I have a show of hands to actually defer this to after closed? I have 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10. Councillor Francis, did you raise your hand at all? Yes. I have all of everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we are now moving on to public delegations. The public has been advised of how to pre-register to be a delegate at public meetings on today's agenda. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of council, City of Hamilton to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make an oral submission at public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added to as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So we will start with 8.1, which is PED 25021, application for zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 525 Stone Church Road, East Hamilton in Ward 7. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation or to waive the presentation, or would committee like to see the staff presentation at all? Ward council, yes? Yes, we would like to see the staff presentation. So I think Cheval Gager is here. Cheval, please come on down.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, staff, and public in attendance. My name is Shahwal Kachar. I am a development planner with the Planning Division, and I will be discussing this zoning bylaw amendment application for the lands located at 525 Stone Church Road East. Staff are recommending approval of the zoning bylaw amendment application, which would effectively permit the development of an 8-story multiple dwelling containing 105 affordable dwelling units. The subject site is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Stone Church Road East and Redmond Drive. The subject site is accessed from Redmond Drive and currently contains 8 blocks of 2-story townhouse dwellings. The proposed development would require the demolition of 1 townhouse block, resulting in the removal of 8 existing rental townhouse dwellings to accommodate the proposed development of 105 affordable rental units. The subject site has approximately 130 meters of frontage on Redmond Drive and approximately 98 meters of frontage on Stone Church Road East, with a total land area of approximately 1.5 hectares. This is a location map showing the zoning of the subject site and surrounding properties. The application for zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone a part of the subject property identified as Block 1 in the location map from RT20 district to the E2 district with some modifications, and rezone the remainder of the subject property identified as Block 2 to RT20 district with some site-specific modifications to it. The proposed site-specific modifications are to increase the maximum building height from 26 meters to 27 meters, to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 7.5 meters to 3 meters, to reduce the minimum exterior side yard setback from 7.5 meters to 7 meters, and to increase the minimum side yard encroachment for any canopy projection from 1 meter to 2 meters. There are a few more site-specific modifications requested, which are discussed in detail in the report. Staff are in support of these modifications, as the applicant has demonstrated that the modifications would not have any adverse impact to the proposed development and the surrounding area. This is a concept plan as proposed by the applicant. In this concept plan, a block of townhouse development has been replaced with a multiple dwelling building that would provide for 105 affordable rental units. We will now take a photo tour of the subject site and surrounding area. In this photo, we are looking north at the subject site from Stone Church Road East. This is a photo of Stone Church Road East and Redmond Drive, and we are looking west. This is a photo of Redmond Drive looking north. This is a photo looking east on Stone Church Road East. In this photo, we are looking at the commercial plaza across the subject site on Redmond Drive. This is a photo of Redmond Drive looking south. In this photo, we are looking northwest at the subject lands from Redmond Drive. And in this photo, we are looking at the townhouse block to be demolished and replaced with multiple dwelling affordable rental units. As part of the planning process, a notice of complete application was published in the newspaper on December 6, 2024, and a notice of public meeting was sent to 156 property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands. Till date, we have received no comments from the public. However, city clerks have received two written correspondences. In closing, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application can be supported as it is consistent with the provincial planning statement and complies with the Urban Hamilton official plan. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Pauls, please.
Thank you. It's 8 units, and it's going to be 8-story. You said there were 105. I think there's 107, right? Am I correct?
Through the chair, there are 105 proposed units. Yeah.
Okay, I thought there were 107. That's fine. And there has been no complaint. I know the area quite well. So, yeah, thank you for the presentation. We'll ask questions if there's anybody else. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls. Seeing as there are no other speakers, thank you so much for your presentation. We do have Caitlin Gillis from Landwise that's in attendance today. Caitlin, are you able to come on down? I'm sorry, Caitlin's still going to come on down, but we need to receive the presentation. So Councillor Pauls and Councillor Kassar to receive the presentation. May I have a show of hands to receive the presentation, please? Councillor Beatty, you in? Yes. Councillor Francis is in, and then Councillor Kretsch. So we got everyone. Thank you. All right. Now we have Caitlin, which is great because she has proactively come down while we were doing that procedural thing. So
Good morning, Chair, members of Planning Committee, staff, members of public. My name is Caitlin Gillis, Senior Planner at Landwise, and we are retained by Victoria Park Community Homes for the zoning bylaw amendment in front of you for 525 Stone Church Road East, also known as Lacoma Court. With me today is our junior planner, Chloe Simpson, who assisted on the day-to-day of this file, as well as representatives of Flourish, the affordable housing provider consultant, and representatives, of course, from Victoria Park Community Homes. I'll do my best to make this presentation brief, but firstly, thank you to staff, including Chevelle and Spencer and Reno, for your time and work on this file to get us to today's public meeting. We have reviewed staff's report and support their recommendation. So I'm not going to repeat Chevelle's presentation, which is appreciated. Skipping into the proposed development, so as noted, we are proposing an 8-story multiple dwelling with 105 affordable housing units, and it's located at the corner of Stone Church and Redmond. So it's pulled away from the single detached neighborhood that abuts us to the north and east. And the goal of this redevelopment was to intensify the subject lands while mitigating disruption to the existing tenants as much as possible. In result of that, we've been able to maintain the road network and maximize on-site parking as much as possible, and this proposal represents a net increase of 97 units per hectare, 97 units overall on site. A closer look at the site plan for the redevelopment area. So through consultation, we heard there were concerns of site circulation and access. So in result of that, we have proposed a separate access to the grade level parking from Redmond, while the existing access will continue to maintain as it is, and a transportation impact assessment has been prepared and approved, confirming that the existing road network can accommodate the proposed intensification, and there are no impacts to the road network and result of the new driveway. And for the multiple dwellings specifically, we're proposing a total of 52 parking spaces, in addition to 54 long-term bike parking, and short-term parking will also be provided on site. There is another slight modification to the site plan, more at the northeast corner of the site, where we've proposed to modify the road network slightly to double load the parking to add additional new parking on site. And then the park space that exists today will continue to operate as it is. And then the majority of the existing parking that serves the townhouses will remain as they are. So here are some preliminary elevations of the building. So it does read with a two-story podium to kind of be in sync with the two-story townhouses on site, and then a bit of a step in for the upper 6 stories, which are proposed to be articulated with materiality balconies and some building design to set the building back slightly. And here are some preliminary renderings. In terms of sustainability building design, the building will be designed to passive house principles, and we are considering green roofs as well as solar technology, which is actually quite interesting on the balcony railings. And because of that fenestration, it will actually mitigate any overlook onto the existing townhouses. In terms of public consultation, so prior to meeting with the city through formal consultation, we met with Lacoma Court residents specifically to review a preliminary concept. All residents were invited, about 14 households attended. And that's where we heard some feedback about site circulation and, of course, impact from the change of built form on their site. And then August 20th, we held a more general neighborhood open house with 229 attendees invited, and about 11 came out to see the information. And comments received regarded traffic safety, site circulation, and access, parking, the relocation and affordability, and building height impacts on the existing townhouses. So to address those concerns, again, we've proposed a separate entrance for 22 parking spaces. We've completed analysis on the traffic to confirm that we weren't adding to any of the existing conditions and making it worse, which was confirmed we are not. And we've proposed a number of pedestrian accesses. In terms of parking, we understand that this is a change for the site, so we are aligned with zoning bylaw 05200's parking standards for this parking rate area. So we're proposing 1 parking space per townhouse, 0.5 parking spaces per apartment, and then we're proposing a 0.1 visitor parking ratio. So these spaces are highlighted. The green are the townhouse parking, blue is the visitor parking, and pink is for the apartment. This will be all confirmed through site plan. And the existing tenants with parking that will be relocated will work directly with Vic Park. In terms of impacts to the existing townhouses, a wind study was completed which confirmed that there are no wind issues with the proposed height. And then in addition to that, we did do a sun shadow study which confirmed in the morning there will be slight impact on the amenity areas for 2 of the blocks. But about 11 o'clock, all the shadow will be out of the rear yards, and then by noon, shadow will be off amenity space, and it will start shifting across the street. And they will have full afternoon sun, and then it will gradually continue shifting as the sun sets. Overall, the proposed development is consistent with PPS and conforms to the Urban Hamilton official plan. And this proposed development demonstrates Victoria Park's strategic mission to intensify existing land holdings to provide a better range of housing options within their housing portfolio. The proposed development for an 8-story multiple dwelling with a total of 105 dwelling units ranging in 1 and 2 bedrooms will contribute to a continuum of housing and offer existing and new tenants with dwellings that meet their needs as their family structure changes and they age in place. In return, being able to offer apartment dwellings in this location There will be townhouses that become available for families that need that size of home. And Vic Park does work closely with City Housing Services rental list. So to facilitate the proposal, a zoning bylaw amendment is required, followed by site plan control, which will refine some of these details, including a construction management plan. And tenants most affected by the demolition have been in continuous discussions with Vic Park, and the holding in place on the zoning related to a tenant relocation plan will ensure all City of Hamilton policies are being met. In conclusion, again, we have read staff's report and support the recommendation, and we believe this constitutes good land use planning. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Caitlin. And I heard several times that you are in support, so perfect. May I have a mover? I'm asking for any speakers right now. Councillor Pauls, please.
Yeah, and of course I support this because we do need a housing. My question, out of the 105 apartment, how many are going to be affordable?
So they'll all be affordable, various ranges. So there will be rent geared to income units, below market affordability, and then market affordability. I apologize, I don't know necessarily the ins and outs of each level, but all of them will meet the definition of affordable.
Can you repeat that? Did you say geared to income too?
Rent geared to income, yes. So part of the housing relocation is that any rent geared to income units that are removed need to be replaced.
Okay, that's great. So are the people already, of course, no, have they been relocated? No?
No, they have been put on notice and have already started to put in, to my understanding, putting options, their relocation options. And from what I've heard, it's sounding very positive that those units will be available for them where they would like to be.
I did have a few complaints about the usual things, parking and traffic. How far is it? I think it's pretty close. There's another 8-story at the corner.
Yes, so I believe you're referring to 1540 Upper Wentworth.
Yes.
Which is a Kiwanis redevelopment, which is very similar at the corner of Upper Wentworth and Emperor.
Right. But there's also another 8-story building right at the corner of Stone Church and Upper Wellington. It's only about 200 meters, right?
Correct.
200-300 meters from this. And I think one of the complaints that people have is accumulative. We have apartments after apartment after apartment within very short distance, right? So from the corner of Upper Wentworth and Redmond, it's about, what, 250 meters?
I would say give or take, yeah.
So, and that's where some of the concern, of course, I support this because we do need housing, but those were just some of the concerns that I've heard. And so it's good. You said there's only 1 or 2 bedroom, no 3 bedrooms at all, right?
Not at this time. The townhouses on site that are existing are, I believe, a range of 2 and 3 bedroom homes.
Yeah, and I've been there many times, actually very well kept. Actually, I think the driveway was all redone just a couple of years ago.
I believe they did do a revamp on their parking area.
Yeah, and it was very nice. So, yeah, thank you. And yeah, I support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pauls. Any other speakers to this? Okay, seeing none, may I have a mover? Thank you, Caitlin, for your delegation. Mover and seconder to receive Councilor Pauls and Councilor Kassar. Show of hands, please. Looks like we got everyone. Awesome, thank you. At this time, I am going to ask if there are any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? And for a third time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this meeting? Seeing that we do not have any other public members, may I have a mover and a seconder for that the public submissions regarding the matter were received and considered by committee and that the public meeting will be closed? Councilor Pauls and Councilor Kassar. May I have your vote, show of hands, please? Okay, that looks like everyone. Thank you. So now, may I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the report recommendations or Counselor Pauls and Counselor Kassar. Any speakers to this report at all? Okay. Oh, sorry, Counselor Kassar, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wang. No questions, just some comments. I just wanted to echo my support. I think this is an excellent development, more affordable housing, passive house standard, good intensification of an existing site. In the report, it mentioned it's, I think, in the top 13% of transit usage in that area. So all around, very good and supportive.
Excellent, thank you. Now, may I have the vote, please? And I think it's a show of hands, right? Electronic vote, sorry. So we have a mover and a speaker, a mover and a seconder. May I have your electronic vote, please? Councillor Taddison had to leave to attend a very important announcement up at the airport. And the vote is up. And that vote carries 9-0. Thank you. We did defer 8.2, so we will continue to move on to 8.3. This is PED 25035, applications for an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision for lands located at 228 McNeely Road and 1069 Highway 8, Stony Creek, Ward 10. There is a staff presentation. James Van Roy is here, so we would like to see the staff presentation, please.
Throwing one over here. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, public in attendance, and staff. My name is James Van Roy, and I am the planner for our Development Planning Division East Team, Wards 9, 10, and 11. And I'm here to discuss the official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision applications, UHOPA 24009, ZAC 24030, and 25T 202407 for lands located at 228 McNeely Road and 1069 Highway number 8, Stony Creek. Staff are recommending denial of the applications, which are intended for the development of 190 townhouse dwellings, a park, and future development block. Reasons for the denial, amongst others, are that the proposal does not meet the Urban Hamilton official plan's parkland policies, does not meet the Block 3 servicing strategy, and is not considered orderly development of land. This is our property. The lands are just north of Highway number 8 and to the east of McNeely Road. We have approximately 54 meters of frontage on McNeely Road, 17 meters of frontage on Highway number 8, and the land area is 4.15 hectares. You can see in this slide that to the north we have agricultural lands, to the east we have agricultural lands, to the south we have residential and commercial uses, and to the west we have single detached dwellings along McNeely Road. I also note that there is a city-owned property kind of in this void horseshoe area. There's also, I should note that there are active development applications to the north and south of the subject property. Here we have our location map. This is a map showing zoning of the surrounding properties and the subject lands. Before I get into the zoning, I'll quickly go over the official plan amendment changes that are proposed. The majority of the lands are designated neighborhood park in the Fruitland Winona secondary plan. The applicants are changing that to a low-density residential 3 with a site-specific policy to permit 5 or more dwellings within a townhouse block. There are also portions of the property that are designated low-density residential 2 and low-density residential 3, which are also being proposed to change to the low-density residential 3 site-specific designation. The zoning bylaw amendment is seeking to change the agricultural specialty zone and the agricultural specialty 9 zone, as well as the rural residential 14 zone to a multiple residential RM3 zone modified. And we have some portions of the property that are being brought into our City of Hamilton 05-200 bylaw from Stony Creek's bylaw, and they are proposed as P1 neighborhood park zone and low-density residential 1 zone in 05-200. Here we have our draft plan of subdivision. So we have 6 blocks proposed in total. Blocks 1 and 2 are street townhouses. Block 4 is parkland that's being proposed, and block 3 is the townhouse condominium block proposed. We also have a future development block proposed and a small road widening block, that's block 6. And also the street A is being proposed as part of this draft plan of subdivision. And this is our concept plan. So again, it's 190 townhouse dwelling units. It's a combination of back-to-back towns and block towns, as well as street towns lining Street A. And this is an overlay of the subject property on the Block 3 servicing strategy. In addition to our concern for the loss of neighborhood park, we also are concerned with the loss of Street P, which is this street here, which is intended to provide storm water management and sanitary services for lands to the west. And for a quick tour, here we have our subject lands. This is the site that fronts McNeely. You can see the public notice sign posted on the subject property. This is a view looking north on McNeely Road. Here we have a view looking south on McNeely Road. You can see the Niagara Escarpment in the background there. And here we have a view of the single detached dwellings just across the street from the public notice sign. This is a view looking northwest-ish on McNeely Road. This is a view of the single detached dwellings that back onto the subject lands. They're on McNeely Road on the east side. And here we are teleporting kind of to 1069 Highway number 8. This is that future development block area. So that's the 17-meter frontage. And here we are looking west on Highway number 8. And here we are looking east. And lastly, this is a designated property that backs onto the subject lands. The application was submitted on November 5th and deemed complete on November 18th. Notice of complete application was sent to property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands on November 29th and again on January 24th, 2025. Public notice sign was posted on November 27th, 2024, and the applicants hosted a public open house on January 25th, 2024, so almost a year ago. Staff's issues, just at a high level, are that the proposal does not comply with the city's parkland policies, does not comply with the Block 3 servicing strategy, does not meet the intent of the neighborhood park designation, does not meet our urban design guidelines, does not demonstrate the protection of trees, and is premature until necessary storm and sanitary water main outlets are secured through abutting lands, or until servicing has been extended to the lands. And the proposal is not in the public interest nor in an orderly development of lands, and not consistent with the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, and does not appropriately address Section 51, subsection 24 of the Planning Act, and does not comply with the general intent of the Urban Hamilton Official Plan and the Fruitland Winona Secondary Plan. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I do have a speakers list started, so Councillor Beatty first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you for the presentation. I'm taken back. The McNeely Road property was Mary Rados's peach farm, and the Highway 8 property was Pete Groot's cherry farm next to the famous, what used to be the Tawu House, and the Pettit Mansion, the big brick house there. So a lot of history interwoven with what's being presented here. I don't think interwoven is a word. I'm going to take that one back. woven in with. I think, James, we heard the primary drivers in this, what I've heard from the community is the park. That's been on the books as part of the Fruitland Winona secondary plan for a considerable amount of time. I'm just wondering if there's any more elaboration that you might offer staff's perspective on the original park proposal and how this kind of contradicts.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councilor Beatty, Committee Member Beatty. The parkland for Fruitland Winona was developed in 2014. We had population projections for all of Fruitland Winona. It was 15,000 people. Our policies in volume 1 of our official plan that kind of direct our secondary plans was 0.7 hectares per 1,000 people. So we had a population of 15,000. It worked out to 10 hectares, 10.7 hectares across all of Fruitland Winona. And in particular areas, we split up the neighborhood parkland into 4 separate parks, and all of them are around 2.4-ish hectares, I'll say. So that's where we arrived at the 2.4 hectares that we have for this site, and of course, we have under supply right now.
Thank you for that, James. And 10 hectares total across, that's really substantial, 44 acres, 45 acres of new parkland coming to the community, which is exciting. Wanted to also ask about the density levels in the proposal. The Fruitland Winona secondary plan, to my recollection, that document that you spoke of from 2014 had this in a lower density categorization earlier on. And I'm wondering how the new proposal fits in with that. Another concern from the community, of course, being the level of density that's being attained through the townhouse as opposed to maybe what was originally envisioned for the area. I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little more on that. That totally put you on the spot, too. I apologize.
My apologies. I do not have the density maximum memorized. I believe it's 60 units per hectare for low density residential 3. I don't believe the applicants are exceeding that density level, but I'd have to go back to confirm.
Okay. And I don't see any other hands up on the bench, so I guess we'll take that back. Last question, and this was a concern raised for another development in the area about a block away, was the ramifications of air drainage and the importance of air drainage to sustain the agricultural community to the south of Highway 8. Just reminding members that the lands to the south of Highway 8, closer to the escarpment, are basically permanently designated as agricultural, and there are operating farms close by, and a half-degree temperature differential can be catastrophic for a lot of these crops. Was air drainage included in this? I didn't hear it specifically highlighted, but I'm wondering if you can elaborate on the concerns about air drainage for the area.
Through the chair, air drainage assessment was not requested at the formal consultation stage. I think at the formal consultation stage, we didn't realize that the heights were being altered, and the heights are being increased. So one would be, we would request one if we were go forward with an approval, and we'd maybe have a hold for updating the air drainage assessment that was provided.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Chair. Thank you, James.
Are there any other speakers to this? Okay. Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive this presentation, please? Councillor Beatty and Councillor Alex Wilson. Show of hands to receive, please. Councillor Beatty, you're in, right? Yep, okay, and we're good. Thank you. Everyone has indicated. Up now, we do have Dave Ashton and Stephanie Murtich with MHBC Planning, and I think it's just Dave that's attending then. Dave, come on down.
Good evening, good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to this item this morning. Thanks to James for his presentation. We are here this morning. There's representatives from Lozani Homes here as well. And we are here really, number one, we came in to indicate that we are not in support of the staff recommendation. We have some information that we'd like to share with regard to the proposal that was made. At the same time, I think we've had discussion with staff right up until this morning on an alternative that we've been working on that we think provides an opportunity for some future development and for generally the parkland that the secondary plan was showing. So I just want to run through a few slides in the presentation because I think there's two components to it: discussion on parkland and provision of parkland, and then how can the lands develop outside of that parkland area. So the site, as mentioned, it's in a part of an area that is planned for future development. Some of that is happening. Lands to the north, lands to the south. There are plans for future development, and this plan is kind of integrated in all of this part of the secondary plan area. The secondary plan area identified parkland. It identified some lands for residential development as well. So it wasn't just park on these lands. There was residential identified in the form of two types of low-density residential. So there is plans for residential kind of to shape around the park. I would just point out a couple of items that were referenced. When talking about the Block 3 servicing plan, I would just suggest that it's a guiding framework, not necessarily a policy document. So what we're proposing may change a little bit of how the road might look, but it would be maintaining the intent of what was proposed as part of that document. Also, at the time of the secondary plan, the Planning Act and how the Planning Act was looking at parkland dedication was a little bit different. And as the Planning Act evolved over time, there were changes insofar as the amount of land the municipality could require for parkland dedication. And it looked at per hectare amounts, which changed, as we all know, and a cap on the amount of parkland. So the concept plan is this. There's a mix of townhouses, internal private streets. There was a portion of the lands that was identified as parkland. The applications, I won't get into those details, but there are various blocks for residential and park. Conceptual design. Some of the comments in the report might have suggested that a fulsome review wasn't done on landscaping and design and open space and elevations. And I just wanted to share that work was done. So even if we move forward and talk about parkland on these lands, there still has been a lot of effort put forward on how maybe remaining portions of the lands may be permitted for development. So in response to comments, and we've had discussion with staff, and like I said, even this morning, this is a bit of a hard plan to read, but it's our thinking of what an alternative could be. The Planning Act talks about a requirement for parkland, 5% or 1 hectare per 600 units. Again, in 2014, that was a bit different. It was 1 hectare per 300 units. So the rules changed a bit over time. So based on a proposal of 189 units and the developable area, we're looking at a maximum parkland requirement with applications on these lands of 0.32 hectares. And that's what was proposed with the plan of subdivision, was that the Planning Act requirements would be met. Now, we've been having discussions with the city on how can we work together to implement the secondary plan, and we think there may be some approaches in working with the city as far as trying to find a way where there's a dedication component, and then some other avenue as to agreement with the city on how the lands for the park could be provided. But I just wanted to flag that what's being proposed in the application is actually in compliance with the Planning Act requirements associated with parkland dedication. But we're open to further dialogue to see how we can implement the secondary plan. With regard to submission, All of the studies that were requested were submitted. The air drainage was not requested. If that's something as part of a follow-up, we'll continue to have discussions with staff. But all of the details that were requested were submitted as part of the submission. So in our opinion, what is being proposed is consistent with provincial policy. It is conforming to the direction of the official plan, and it is implementing, in general, the objectives of the Fruitland-Winona Secondary Plan as far as the various land uses, where the difference is the designation associated with the park, which is a bit of a function of change over time. Our request at the time I did this presentation was to ask the committee to not support the staff recommendation and in fact support the applications. But I think in light of some of the discussions that we've been having, discussion with staff this morning, our request would change, and we would like to request that the committee provide deferral for us to continue some dialogue with staff to try and find an opportunity for development to occur and a park to be identified, and perhaps something deferred for a couple months to April could give us some time to further have those discussions and see if we can't come up with a solution that is a win for everybody.
Thank you for your delegation. We do have a speakers list. Councillor Beatty first, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, thank you for the presentation. I think you've identified correctly that the park is the big ticket item for the community, and the original proposal was not satisfactory, and I think that's the primary driver behind a lot of this. I heard in your comments and then at the end that there may be a willingness to defer this to staff for ongoing conversation to come back with a better, more fulsome plan that takes into consideration a lot of the requests that the community has made. Chair, I think I've already spoken to the item, so I wouldn't be able to make that deferral, but if there's a member in gallery or on, there's somebody online that's prepared to defer it at the appropriate time. So thank you, Councillor Francis, for that. If you're able to move that deferral to send this back so that we avoid the unfortunate situation if we end up that this goes before a certain tribunal that we would rather it not go to. That might be appropriate, but could I ask staff if that would be agreeable to them before we proceed down that line? We apparently have some willingness from the proponent to engage in further conversation.
So just a reminder that we're talking about questions to the delegate, and so we have to first receive their presentation before we can actually get started on all of that stuff. So perhaps we'll park that question until later.
I'll ask the same questions then that I asked of staff, but some of them may be irrelevant given the new information that's been brought forward. Pertaining to the park, it shows now on that slide a proposal that I think goes back to the original version or something close to the original version of the proposal embedded within the Fruitland-Winona plan for a full-size park. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little more on that.
Yes, through you, Chair. What's being proposed is a park that is generally in the same location. It provides the frontage on the street to the east. The size there is not quite the exact. If you start to overlay the secondary plan, which I would say is not really at an exact scale anyway, it may be short about 2,000 square meters. But what we think is what we're proposing is still a full-size park, provides the adequate frontage, and would provide an adequate size and in a square rectangular shape that would provide for a functional park that was intended in this area.
Okay, follow-up question then. You mentioned air drainage as a possibility in future conversations, that you'd be agreeable to examining that if it came forward as a request from staff. I guess just publicly, if you would comment or state that you would be in agreement to an air drainage study if requested by staff?
Through you, Chair, yes, I would just add the caveat that if the plan changes and there's no change in the height, and if we're still looking at, a height or scale that doesn't trigger the air drainage, then we'll work with staff on whether or not it's required. But if it's required by a change, then yes, that's something we'll work with staff and we'll provide as part of any follow-up.
Thank you for that. And then I guess the final question from me, if we do move to a deferral position, Chair, and you can rule me out of order, but I have the delegate, the representative of the developer here. If we were to defer this in a good faith manner for future conversation, I would just want some assurances that, tomorrow an application wouldn't be filed to move this to the OLT.
Through you, Chair, I've had discussion with our client, and if there's a reasonable timeline, which is why I mentioned April, for something to come back, and if we know that there's a date that something's coming back to, there's a commitment to work toward that timeline in good faith with staff to find a solution.
Okay, thank you. And then at the appropriate time, I would like to ask staff if they'd be agreeable to that, if they would be able to work it into their work plan.
I
so
think
don't
we're
put them on the
coming
spot.
really close to that point. Okay, excellent. Are there any other speakers for the delegate? Questions to the delegate? Okay, seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation from the agent, Councillor Beatty, Councillor Kassar. Show of hands, please, for the receipt of this presentation. And I think yes, that's great. Everyone is on board for that one. Now I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? And for a third time, are there any public members that wish to speak at this meeting? Okay, seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for that the public submissions regarding this matter were received and considered by committee, and that the public meeting will be closed. Councillor Beatty? Councillor
Chair, if I may.
Kassar, yes.
Before we close the public meeting, and I think this has been done before, I'm wondering if we might not close the public meeting, be it that the plan possibly is going to be deferred to staff, something new will come back, and if we can leave the public meeting open to allow the public to come back with their thoughts on the new application.
I see. So clerk, how do I do that then?
So we should probably just do the motion to receive the written submissions that were included in this agenda, and then go straight to the deferral vote.
Okay. So same mover and a seconder for the receipt of the written communications, please. And may I have a show of hands to receive the written communications, please? I think counts. Oh, yep, perfect. It's weird because some of the videos turn off. So I'm trying to figure out how that all works, but it looks like everybody's on board for that one. All right, so now we're going to put the report on the table. And then, clerk, do we do comments or questions on the report first before we actually do potentially the referral or the deferral?
I put the report recommendations on the floor. And then
have conversation?
proceed, yes.
And then we'll do, okay, all right. So I will ask to have a mover and a seconder to put the report recommendations on the floor, please. Councillor Beatty, Councillor Kassar. And may I start with comments or questions of staff? So Councillor Beatty first, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The question being, would the deferral to staff be something that they could accommodate in their work plan and have conversations and perhaps bring something back in the spring of 2025? The applicant is hoping for something in April and see what's possible from staff on that level.
Director Fayback, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, Anita Fayback, Acting Director of Planning and Chief Planner. Certainly, if it's the will of committee to refer the item back to staff, we would certainly have those conversations. In terms of procedurally what would need to happen, the concept presented today would need to be circulated, which I believe it has not yet been circulated. So we would need to get revised comments from departments and agencies. We would need to have conversations around the approach to the parkland dedication or acquisition that the consultant referred to. And then we would need to prepare a staff report, issue notice of a statutory public meeting, provided that staff could support it. So I would just note that the April timeline may be a little difficult to achieve, knowing that there's still some work that would need to be done.
Through you, Madam Chairman, to the councillor. Would also add that the applicants have provided a revised concept plan, and they've indicated that it's moving in the direction closer to the Block 3 servicing strategy. However, they have not provided the other supporting studies and reports that would to support the revised concept plan, i.e., I was just looking at the engineering drawings in the block servicing strategy. How does their revised concept plan align with the block servicing strategy from a stormwater, sanitary, and water perspective? So that information would be necessary for growth management staff and Hamilton Water staff to complete their review. There may be some additional information that as we sit down and work, initial meeting with the applicant, as we've discussed, any updates to the air drainage plan or better understanding as to how does this revised concept plan align with the air drainage work, et cetera, So, well, as Ms. Fayback indicated, we would, circulate the application based on what we have. Right now, there are gaps in the information, so the applicant would be needed, we would require additional information from the applicant to fill in those gaps. And we may actually end up with an interim reporting condition based on what we know at that time in, say, April or May, as opposed to being able to have full draft plan conditions sorted out to present to committee for their consideration. So it will be sort of a two-way dialogue with the applicants in terms of, what them updating their submission so that staff can do a fulsome review, and then staff making themselves available to work with the applicant in terms of meeting and better understanding the revised concept plan and how it moves forward with the implementation of the block servicing strategy, because it is the policies of the Fruitland Winona secondary plan that all development is generally to be in conformity with the block servicing strategy, although the senior development engineer Ashraf Hanna does have the authority to make minor deviations from the block servicing strategy where he's satisfied that it's in good engineering and protects the city interests. Thank you.
Councillor?
So thank you, Chair. A very, very fulsome answer. I'm just trying to tease out the possible from the conceptual, and the concept being that we could defer this and at least engage in conversation and try to come back to this committee with something workable. It sounds like we're close on the timelines. It might have to extend out beyond the April ask, possibly. I have no way of confirming this with the applicant because they're now not on the floor, other than I don't know if there's a thumbs up from if it's possible or not, or a nod, that there's an understanding that we're going to do our best if this is deferred. Chair, at the end of the day, I feel like the alternative, this just ends up before a tribunal and the local decision-making is extinguished. And I'd much rather at least have the opportunity for the proponent to meet with staff and try to work towards a locally developed solution than to lose all control of this somewhere else. So my hope is that we can meet some kind of timelines and work in good faith towards a solution at a local level that we can bring back before this body and proceed. That's my hope.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to get us, I'm asking a procedural question to clerk now. Is it a deferral or is it a referral?
Deferral, because it's
is a
staying within
deferral.
planning.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Up now is Councillor Francis, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to move that deferral motion at this point, if I could, and I'll read out the language for you here, that the item be deferred back to staff to work with the applicant on the revised concept plan and report back to planning committee.
Is there a date?
I wasn't going to, I could put a date on it. I just thought based on what I heard from staff there, best to probably not put a date on it with the goal of trying to get it here for April, but it sounded like they didn't want a date. If staff are open to having a date on that, I'm good to do that as well.
Okay, so I'll look to staff first, but I do recognize we also need a seconder for that particular deferral. But Director Fayback, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, as indicated by myself and acting GM Robichaud, I think there's still a fair bit of work that would need to be done by both the applicant and staff. So I just would hesitate with an April statutory public meeting date. As GM Robichaud indicated, we could come back with an interim report at that time and advise of the progress. But I think based on what I see, I think we would need a little bit more time than April. Thank you.
All right, and so Currently, that is the answer from staff. I recognize that Councillor Beatty has a question in relation to that.
Correct. The reference that was made to the statutory public meeting, we haven't closed the existing public meeting, so we're not actually starting a new one. I'm wondering if that allows any more leeway for staff.
Through the chair to the councillor, while the public meeting would remain open, we would give notice in case there was any members of the public that wanted to speak, because it would be a revised concept.
Okay. I want to give staff the opportunity to do the work, but I also want some ability to have this come back in a defined period. I mean, I don't want it to go on forever. I don't think the applicant is prepared to do that either. So I'm trying to find the balance between having an open-ended motion, which I appreciate the thoughts of my colleague, but I also want some certainty, and I think that's what the community is looking for. I'm wondering if there's a balance between the two that might be attained here.
So
Through you, Chair.
do recall that Director Fayback did say an interim report back for April. Is that sufficient?
I think that would be a movement in the right direction. So is there language that would be required in, I can't speak to the mover's motion, but would there be language required for an interim report in April?
Through the chair to the councillor, I would suggest that the motion include that timeline. So to say something that, and staff report back in April with providing an interim report of discussions on the revised concept.
Okay. And I do know that Councillor Francis has moved this, and Councillor Beatty will second.
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. Clerk, did you get all of that language? Yes. So just so that committee is clear, we are deferring this to an interim report sometime in April for staff. So I think staff is clear on that direction, unless we need to see that on the big screen. Does everybody need to see that? Never mind then. If we're all clear on what the intention is here, I think that's good. So we do have a mover and a seconder. I think I need an electronic vote on this one. Yes, and Councillor Nan is a thumbs up. Okay, vote is up. Councillor Nan was a thumbs up. And that vote carries 9-0. Thank you. So we are moving on because we don't need to close off this whole receipt of report or anything like that, right? Okay. We are now moving on to items for consideration, which is 9.1. This is PED 25009, request for direction to proceed with appeal of Committee of Adjustment decision to approve minor variance application GLA 2409 for lands located at 2016 Regional Road 56 Glanbrook. And this was deferred from the January 14th Planning Committee. So may I have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report, please? Councillor Kassar, and I'm looking to somebody on the screen. Councillor Maureen Wilson, please. Any discussion on 9.1? Seeing none, may I have the vote electronically, please? Councillor Nanza, yes. And the vote is up. Yes, Councillor Beatty is out of the room. And that vote carries 8-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to 9.2. This is PED 25046, the Minister's Zoning Order Request for 20 Road West and Airport Employment Growth District. And if required, we do have Charlie Toman here. And if you have a presentation or opening remarks, I'll pass it over to Charlie.
Through the chair, Charlie Toman, Program Lead, Policy Planning and Municipal Comprehensive Review. I do have a PowerPoint presentation.
Committee like to see that? Yes, please. All right. Charlie, please come on down.
Good morning, Chair, members of Planning Committee, staff, and public in attendance. My name is Charlie Toman. I am the Program Lead, Policy Planning and Municipal Comprehensive Review within the Sustainable Community section of the Planning Division. And I'll be providing a brief presentation on a proposed Minister's Zoning Order request by the Upper West Side Landowners Group. The proposed Minister's Zoning Order, or MZO request applies to approximately 226 hectares of land. That includes land both outside of Hamilton's urban boundary and lands within the Airport Employment Growth District's secondary plan, or the AEGGD. And the general location where the MZO is within is shown here. For a bit of background, the lands outside of the urban boundary had been within the urban area as part of the AEGD secondary plan approval back in 2010. That secondary plan was appealed, and the Ontario Municipal Board approved a settlement in 2015, removing these areas from the urban Hamilton official plan. Sorry. Since then, the city has received several official plan amendment applications for these lands by the Upper West Side Landowners Group, and these applications include 3 applications in 2020 to bring most of the lands currently outside of the urban boundary into the urban boundary, and in 2024, the applicant appealed those applications to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lack of decision. A secondary plan application was submitted in late 2023, and the city had deemed that application incomplete, and therefore it's never been assessed. And the applicant did appeal the city deeming that application incomplete to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Finally, an official plan amendment application was submitted in early 2024, which proposed to amend the Urban Hamilton official plan's growth policies to allow urban expansions and to decrease the city's intensification target from 80 to 60%. This application was also deemed incomplete by the city, and that decision was also appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. A complete chronology of planning applications related to these lands is provided in Appendix D to staff's report. So just a brief overview on what a Minister's Zoning Order is. Under the Planning Act, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing can issue an MZO that overrides local zoning bylaw regulations for a specified area. The Planning Act also states that an MZO does not need to apply with local official plans or be consistent with the provincial planning statement. The province has recently released an MZO framework, which states that they will look at MZO requests if they meet one of the following 2 criteria: that it delivers on a provincial priority that is supported by a minister, or it is supported by the municipality through council resolution or a letter from the mayor where strong mayor powers have been designated. The provincial MZO framework states that any MZO request looked at by the province will be posted on the Environmental Registry of Ontario website for a public comment for at least 30 days. In late 2024, the mayor received a request from the Upper West Side Landowners Group seeking the city support for their proposed MZO request. And a copy of that request is attached as Appendix A to the staff report. And this request included a copy of both the proposed MZO regulations and the mapping. Generally, the proposed MZO would include a 90-hectare urban boundary expansion, the conversion of approximately 99 hectares of designated employment lands to other uses. It would override the city's official plan noise exposure forecast contour policies, It would allow residential zoning for approximately 5,000 dwellings, and the majority of these would be in a modified low-rise residential zone, which allows single, semi, and townhouse dwellings. And the proposal also included a pledge that up to 10% of residential dwellings within the MZO, or about 500 total homes, would be affordable housing. The proposal included a press release announcing a memorandum of understanding with Habitat for Humanity Hamilton, which the delegate spoke to today. It is important to note that the proposed MZO does not match previous applications submitted by the applicant to the city, and this includes their 2023 secondary plan application, which the city deemed incomplete. So next, this is showing the proposed MZO mapping that was submitted by the applicant. And just for a bit of context, here is Dickinson Road to the south, Upper James Street to the east, 20 Road west to the north, and Glencaster Road to the west. It's also important to note that this proposed zoning mapping is what they are planning, or what they are proposing to submit to the province for approval. And the earlier delegate provided like a general land use plan, and it's really important to note that under a minister's zoning order, the MZO would approve the zoning and the regulations applying to those lands. It does not approve official plan policies or secondary plan policies. For greater context, staff have overlaid the proposed zoning with the current zoning to illustrate what would be changing. The opponent's proposed zoning is colored, and the current zoning boundaries are shown in red. And just to quickly go through the plan. So the cream color here, this is the proposed low-rise residential zone, which, as you can see, would cover most of the proposed MZO lands. There are some mid-rise zones proposed along 20 Road West and along this area here, and there is a high-density mixed-use block shown here, and the green area is the proposed conservation hazard land PF5 zone. And then finally, for context, these dashed lines are the existing urban boundary within Hamilton. So all of the lands within here and here are not within the urban boundary, and they're designated rural under the Rural Hamilton Official Plan. Staff have reviewed the proposed MZO and have identified several issues and concerns with the proposal, which are detailed in the staff report. And these issues include, in no particular order, that the MZO would bypass active planning applications at the Ontario Land Tribunal, as well as future planning processes, including secondary planning. The MZO conflicts with the official plan's firm urban boundary growth strategy. While the amount of proposed affordable housing is significant, staff have concerns with the lack of detail in the proposal and the ability of the city to ensure that affordable housing is delivered. Staff note that the inclusion of affordable housing wasn't written into the proposed zoning regulations with the request when the Planning Act allows inclusionary zoning to be part of an MZO approval. The MZO would result in a significant amount of lands within the AEGD being converted to residential uses, which would impact the city's ability to meet its future employment land needs. And building on this concern, the MZO does not include any buffering or transition areas between the proposed residential uses and lands currently zoned for employment uses, leading to potential land use compatibility issues in the future, which could frustrate future industrial development within the AEGD. The proposed MZO map that I showed did not include any school sites or a public park space. And finally, as listed in staff's report, there are negative impacts with the operation and future expansion plans of the Hamilton International Airport. Based on these issues, staff recommend that the City of Hamilton oppose the request for mayoral support for the proposed minister's zoning order. We are recommending that the Director of Planning and Chief Planner be authorized to submit a letter to the Upper West Side Landowners Group, copying the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, affirming the opposition. And finally, if council supports staff's recommendations, it's important to note that the Upper West Side Landowners Group can still submit a MZO request to the province, which they could look at, and as a result, staff recommend that the comments in the staff report form the basis for any future Environmental Registry of Ontario posting related to a potential future MZO request. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions, comments for Charlie right now? Oh, Councillor Beatty, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Charlie, on page 7 was a map, and I'm not familiar at all with this area, so maybe you can answer a question. There, at the far left side, there's a whole bunch of lots, it looks like. I'm assuming that these are existing residential, or I'm wondering if there's an explanation as to what I'm seeing on this map. So it was your PowerPoint in page 7 of 10.
Page 7 has identified issues and concerns. Do you mean page 6, which says proposed zoning overlay? With
Yep.
Current, okay, that's page 6.
Sorry, Chair.
If I can assist, the former golf course lands that used to exist at that location adjacent to Glencaster Road, there was an underlying checkerboard plan of subdivision or lotting plan that was approved prior to any subdivision control was imposed in Ontario at that time. So there are individual lots, I use the word lots with asterisks or brackets, because they don't meet, they were created outside of a Planning Act process, and the City of Hamilton does not recognize that checkerboarding that occurred. So although there may be one, and they are in multiple ownership across, some there are individuals who had acquired those lots, and they've been subsequently conveyed to members of the estate or to third parties. But from an official plan, zoning, and development approvals perspective, the City of Hamilton does not recognize that checkerboarding, and those quote-unquote lots as individual lots do not have any legal status from a planning perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Just to follow up then, it's very interesting. I've never seen anything like it. They are legal, like somebody has a title to these individual properties, but they can't do anything with them? Is that, I'm just curious, Chair. I've never seen anything like it.
To you, Madam Chairman, to the Councillor. Yes, there are situations throughout the City of Hamilton in both the urban and the primarily in the rural area where prior to enactment of subdivision control by the province, individuals could essentially prepare a reference plan or just a surveyor's plan, deposit it, and then they would sell or convey those individual quote-unquote lots. But because those lots were created outside of a Planning Act process, they don't meet any of the city's policies or standards to be considered to be developable as individual lots. You will also notice there is a road network was laid out within that, and that road is not recognized by the City of Hamilton, nor has it ever been, to the best of my knowledge, deeded to the City of Hamilton. So although it does show a local road for those to the interior of that checkerboarding, that road has no status with the City of Hamilton. So essentially these are privately owned lands that have no Planning Act permissions or recognitions for the purpose of being able to develop or redevelop those individual lots. Thank you.
Councillor?
Okay. And again, not being familiar with the area or the planning procedures, at face value, looks so, what I'm hearing is at some point, somebody thought that they were going to build a bunch of something here and started down a road to do that. But then it doesn't conform with our current standards. It conformed at the time potentially with something way back when. Is that almost correct?
Through you, Madam Chairman, that is correct. At one point in time, there was no subdivision control in the rural, in Ontario. So individuals would do this and they would essentially create lots and then sell those lots. But as a result of the province bringing in subdivision control and trying to put a bit of give municipalities more authority over what was happening in their municipality, these lots, although they exist for the purposes of being able to sell them, they don't exist for planning purposes, i.e. you couldn't come in for a building permit on these lots today. Thank you.
Chair, it reminds me of the community of Townsend near Jarvis that almost was, but not quite there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beatty. Up now, we have Councillor Maureen Wilson, followed by Councillor Clark. So Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the second of my question is in reference to the staff report. I'd just like some instruction from you on whether you'd like me to hold that or whether you're allowing some fluidity.
I think today we're going to allow some fluidity and we will receive both the presentation and the staff report together. No, clerk does not like that. I'm going to allow some fluidity here. So, so please go ahead with your question.
Thank you. It was referenced in the presentation, and it's also referenced, I think, page 13 of the report, just for reference sake. I'm wondering if Senior Planner Charlie could unpack the reference to make sure I understand it to the affordable housing and the zoning. Thank you.
Charlie?
Through the chair, so the Upper West Side Landowners Group proposal stated that that up to 10% of the homes would be affordable housing. Mm-hmm. And within their submission, they gave the mayor a copy of what they're planning to submit to the province, which included the proposed zoning regulations for those lands. And the zoning regulations do not mention affordable housing, so
right.
so there's no special zone or special zoning regulations that would require, should the minister's zoning order be approved from like a zoning perspective, to provide that affordable housing. So that is identified as an issue by staff, with the additional note that under the Planning Act, MZOs are also an opportunity to bring forward inclusionary zoning policies, which in a case like this, where up to 10% is proposed, to ensure that it's actually implemented, there is an opportunity to write it right into the zoning regulations.
Okay, thank you for unpacking that. I understand it better now. My second question does pertain to the reference in your report to the consultation or lack thereof with the Indigenous communities. If I understood it, just a general open house, and if interested Indigenous communities were interested, they could attend like everybody else. But my recollection was that this council requested that staff, as part of any expansion or secondary plans, that there be consultation very specific to Indigenous communities. Could you either confirm that or expand on that or help me understand the daylight? Thank you.
Yes, through the chair. So the urban boundary expansion applications received for these lands was submitted in 2020, and the secondary plan application, which was received but deemed incomplete, was received in 2023. And both of those applications predate the city's work that we've been doing on our urban boundary expansion framework, which does identify requirements for early Indigenous engagement. So when the applicant had put together those applications, we didn't have any specific requirements or like a draft framework in place like we do now, calling for that. And our understanding is that in the lead up to, or in the proposed minister's zoning order request proposal, they haven't identified any additional Indigenous engagement.
Thank you for helping me understand both those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Up now is Councillor Kassar before Councillor Clark, please. Councillor Kassar.
Thanks, Chair Wang. A number of my questions have been answered. I just have questions on one topic. It's just about the nature of the land and the agricultural nature of the land. There's been history from both the delegate earlier and Charlie about the history of the land, but the nature of that land hasn't changed. I'm looking at a Dillon Consulting report from 2021 that classifies all the lands in the White Belt, 100% of them, as prime agricultural. And I'm also looking at an OMAFRA soil study that shows all of the lands within the proposed area here as prime agricultural, meaning class 1, 2, and 3. So to Charlie or anyone else on staff, just confirm, please, if you could, that is the case and that's the city's understanding as well. Thank you.
Through the chair, just to unpack that a bit. So the rural Hamilton official plan designation that applies to the lands outside of the urban boundary designates those lands rural, and that designation was originally established way back when the rural Hamilton official plan was first adopted, and that designation correlates with the provincial policy statement at the time as not being within a prime agricultural area. But there's a key distinction between a prime agricultural area and prime agricultural lands. So a prime agricultural area is identified by municipalities through their official plan to identify, broader areas that sort of meet the guidance of the province for being, part of a larger area, sort of interrelated agricultural production area. Prime agricultural lands are soil class 1, 2, and 3 lands, which the province has guidance on how you look at your prime agricultural land to determine whether it is part of a larger prime agricultural area. So the lands outside of the urban boundary aren't within the prime agricultural area, but they do include prime agricultural lands. So those being the kind of higher priority soil classifications.
Thank you, and I appreciate unpacking that. And are you able to confirm that the lands we're talking about today contain those class 1, 2, and 3 as prime agricultural lands?
Yes, the previous work done by this, the mapping available by OMAFRA shows that there is class 1, 2, and 3 soils within the called the 20 Road West potential urban expansion areas.
Thank you. Up now is Councillor Clark, please.
I'm happy to yield to any other member if there's anyone other that wish to speak. No? Okay. First, I was remiss in indicating that I had worked with Sean Ferris for a time at Habitat for Humanity, so I know him well. He's an excellent manager, and he has a remarkable group of staff and volunteers that do incredible things that you wouldn't think could happen, but they make them happen, so thank you for that. I heard Councillor Beatty say that some of these things were interwoven. He's right, they are interwoven, and I'm confused by it. So I'd like to just ask a quick question, if I may. What's the city's role when it comes to someone applying for an MZO? Do we have a defined role?
Director Fayback, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, I believe Charlie had indicated sort of what the criteria is from the province. So in terms of the minister reviewing an MZO, I think there's two criteria. One is that it meets the provincial targets for affordable housing, and the second one is that there's municipal support. And so in terms of overall how city staff would respond to an MZO. Once an MZO is received by the ministry, they do an internal review and then they post it on the Environmental Registry of Ontario for public comment. So through that process, city staff would prepare comments on an MZO. So in terms of the municipal responsibility, it would just be if there's municipal or mayoral support for the MZO, and then city staff would provide comments through an ERO posting.
So there's no direct comments to the minister's office. It is simply through the environmental registry.
To the chair, to the councillor, that's correct.
So if the city says no to an MZO and the minister chooses to proceed, because my understanding is he doesn't have to listen to the city, what happens at that point? Does the city have any role in the planning process after the minister has issued an MZO? Or does he issue an MZO and makes all of the decisions that normally a municipality would make in terms of planning, engineering, connections, buffers for conservation lands, et cetera?
Through the chair to the councillor, what would be issued would be a zoning order, which would lay out the zoning of the lands. It could include it would include land uses, so in terms of built form, residential, and also I believe what's proposed in this draft is zoning for some of the natural features as well. So that would then form the zoning, but there would still need to be planning processes followed. There would have to be likely draft plans to subdivision and site plan applications. But the challenge would be that the official plan, so the minister's zoning order only amends the zoning bylaw, does not amend the official plan. The official plan would still identify these lands as being in the rural Hamilton official plan and designated rural. So there would be a bit of a disconnect in terms of the official plan designations and the zoning, but the act allows the minister to issue a minister's zoning order that does not comply with local municipal official plans and also with provincial policy statements as well.
That's a lot of power. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Pauls, please.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused here. First of all, you said something about the land and the area, if it's farmland or agriculture. How do they test it? Because I just heard that agriculture assessment soil is not suitable for farming in that area. I thought I heard that it wasn't suitable. How do they test if it is suitable for farming or not?
Charlie?
Through the chair, so the testing of like the soil to see if it's class 1, 2, or 3 soil, I can get back with more detail on how that's done, but historically that has been the province, the Ontario Ministry of Agricultural, Food and Rural Affairs would sort of look at different areas of this city. I'm not sure exactly how they do it, but they prepare the mapping that shows if that's class 1, 2, or 3 soils. In terms of the assessment on whether or not the lands can be farmed, so with any urban boundary expansion application, we would require an agricultural impact assessment that would look at some of those things, and the applicant through their original or through their secondary plan, and I believe through their original urban boundary expansion applications, gave their own opinion on whether those lands could be farmed or not, like whether it's a viable farm area. But that is something that through the review of those applications, the city would review, potentially peer review, and then, prepare our own recommendations back to planning committee on those. So.
Mm-hmm. Also, I also, like, as I look at the map, there's an area that is not in the, I know we have a city from urban boundary, but some of them, it's not. It's like infill. And I know the city has, that we want to do all infill. Can you show me on the map, it says that there is an infill there?
Through the chair. So the urban Hamilton official plan and the rural Hamilton official plan has a firm urban boundary growth strategy. And with these particular areas which are not within the urban boundary, the official plan treats these areas the same as any other potential urban boundary expansion area. So there's no policy that kind of says that like an expansion into these areas wouldn't constitute an urban boundary expansion. So they would go through the same process as if they were, like going out away from the existing urban area. So the comment earlier from the delegate, it was that the city has plans to eventually develop these lands. Under the city's official plan, these lands aren't identified to meet the city's housing or employment needs to the year 2051. So there is no city plan within the official plan to that where we want to see the development of these lands.
Okay, so the airport expansion, there will be no industrial building there either, no growth at all in that area, whether it's housing or industrial. Is that what you're saying, till 2051?
What the area I'm referring to, and maybe if I could just show
the map.
The map, yeah.
Yeah, I've got the map. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Can't see my mouse. So the area that I'm referring to are the two areas. Actually, go back 2 more slides. Or back. There. So the purple area are lands within the Airport and Employment Growth District's secondary plan, and those lands they're within the urban area. They are designated for employment use, and they have zoning too that allows industrial development. The 2 gray areas that fall within that box are outside of Hamilton's urban boundary and designated rural. So any urban development within those 2 areas would require the city to expand its urban boundary to allow either industrial or residential uses. So.
But we're not going to allow till 2051.
The official plan states that we do not need any additional urban boundary expansion land to 2051. That's correct.
Okay, it's not my area, so I'm intrigued because we've been talking about this for a couple of years now or more, whether it's in the infill parcel, it's not for sprawl, or it is, so it's a little bit more confusing, but yeah, thank you for the answers.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for Charlie and the presentation? And fluidity-wise, reporty kind of things too. Okay, seeing none. May I have thank you, Charlie. Mover and a seconder to receive this presentation, Councillor Kassar and Councillor Maureen Wilson. Hand vote, right? Hand vote. May I have a hand vote, please? Okay, Councillor Pauls, you're okay with receiving? Yes, so that is everybody. Now, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the written submissions, of which we have at least 70 on the agenda. Councillor Kassar and Councillor Alex Wilson, please. Also a hand vote? Also a hand vote. May I have a hand vote, please? And that's everyone. Thank you. Now, may I have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report? Councillor Kassar and Councillor Alex Wilson. I know we already had discussion, but if we don't need to have additional discussions, I'll just leave that open to everyone if you wanted to have some discussion. Councillor Danko, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just my mic battery might be dead. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. I'll be quick. I'm going to support the staff recommendation, not because I have any real particular opinion on the merits of the minister's zoning order, but in my opinion, this is not really a serious ask. This is more of a PR exercise in order for the applicants that are currently before the Ontario Land Tribunal to publicize their pitch for affordable housing and the merits as they see it in their application, which is fine and their right to do so. But I think, we need to be really careful about minister zoning orders and how serious those are. And the fact is there is a legitimate planning process in place that, I think as a city, we have some issues with, but it is the process that is there and we are working through it. And we should see that out and not consider an end around or an alternative, which again, in my opinion, is really just a PR exercise at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers to this? Seeing none, may I have an electronic vote? Electronic vote, please. Councillor Nanza, yes. Okay, and the vote is up. And that vote carries 8-0. Thank you. Now we are moving on to 9.3. It is the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee minutes for January 24th. May I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Crutch, you're going to move it? Yes, okay. Seconder, please. Councillor Kassar. Any discussion on item 9.3, please? Okay, seeing none. May I have the electronic vote, please? Councillor Nanza, yes. Okay. Vote is up. And that vote carries 8-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to motions. 10.1 is the Committee of Adjustment Decision Review. Councillor Danko, could you please introduce your motion and your seconder, please?
Thank you, Chair. I did have a seconder lined up, so if you would like to volunteer.
Sure. It looks like it's Councillor Kassar is going to volunteer.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to read the resolution. This was a notice of motion at the previous meeting. It comes out of a number of staff recommended appeals of various Committee of Adjustment decisions. So the direction is that planning staff report back to the Planning Committee with a review of decisions of the Committee of Adjustment that have raised significant policy concerns and or are against the recommendations of our professional City Hamilton planning staff. And B, that planning staff provide recommendations to reduce instances of city-initiated appeals of decisions of the Committee of Adjustment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any speakers to this at all? Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you. I do have a question for staff, if it's appropriate at this time.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the motion. I think embedded in the motion is an assumption that there's been more of these instances occurring than there was previously. And that may be a fair assumption because I don't know. So my question to staff is, are they able to offer any insight, sort of a more longitudinal view of whether there has been an increase in this kind of action? Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Reno is going to answer.
Through the chair, Reno Dalbello, Acting Director of Development Planning. Through the chair to the councillor. With regards to the number or the recent number of applications, recently we've put forward conditions in these applications, and with the knowledge that the committee may approve it, but we wish to have conditions on those approvals. And recently, the committee has not included those conditions due to either the applicant not wanting the conditions or the timing of the vote during the C of A committee, that we were not able to interject and ask for these conditions be placed in. There are times where there are conditions also placed in, and staff are satisfied with the condition with the approval, but with those conditions being in place, that we are happy with that, the decision. I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
Counselor?
If I could just repeat back in a really simple way to make sure I've understood. You're saying that there has been a change in process, and that change from prior to 2022 is that now staff reports, not only the staff reports in addition to or instead of recommending a denial or acceptance, they are not sort of binary. Are they saying that should Committee of Adjustment approve this, these conditions should be adhered to as part of the approval process? So clarification on that. And secondly, clarification that I didn't understand, you're not able to get the conditions out into the public realm or of the committee activity because a decision is being made too quickly. But I don't understand that, because I thought you just said the conditions were part of the formal report. So I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the new process.
Through the chair to the councillor, it's not a new process. With regards to the conditions, there are instances on applications where we request the application to be tabled. And knowing it's going to be in, we asked it to be tabled, and there are many instances where the applicant does not want it to be tabled. They wish to have a decision. In instances like that, we have prepared conditions, they're prepared in advance, but not provided. So we have those conditions prepared, potentially knowing that the committee may vote on it in a positive way, and then we would interject and say we wish to have these conditions then to be put into the decision. Other instances where we do have a denial, then there are no conditions, but we do instruct our planners to have some sort of conditions prepared in advance, that if the committee says no to the denial and approves the applications, then we do have some sort of conditions prepared, and we'll interject and say we wish to have these conditions placed on that application. So the process from 2022 has not changed. It's just we're finding, though, that when we ask to table specifically an application, we wish to have further discussions with the applicant, that the applicant does not wish to have further discussions. But then in those instances, we have prepared conditions saying, in case the committee says yes, these are the conditions we wish to put forth.
Thank you. So probably no surprise that the applicant would not seek to table if they're finding there's an environment of a predisposed to approval. But is it the opinion of, if the motion is successful, that this is a procedural matter in terms of the inability or the frustration of getting those additions heard and then secured? Or is this the committee doesn't understand? Like, I'm just, could this be fixed with something? It sounds that way.
Through the chair to the councillor, I believe it's a bit of both. There is a bit of frustration from staff with trying to get our conditions placed in. And then also there's a bit of frustration where There are times where there's not an understanding by the committee of the importance and of those conditions that we wish to have part of the decision.
And thank you. And my final question then, that there's nowhere in the formal report then, in your opinion, that you would say, should committee choose to table, that these conditions need to be applied, because you would think that might be prejudicing, influencing the decision-making of committee. I'm just not understanding why they're not formally part of the report. And those are my questions. I'll listen to my colleagues. Thank you.
Through the chair to the, so the conditions, when it's a denial, the application is a denial. We don't put conditions. When we ask to table it, then we have our conditions with us, but not formally on the application itself, the response to the app. We ask the recommendations to be tabled, and then we have our conditions ready. So, but then when we have an approval with conditions, then it doesn't say to be considered. These are the conditions we wish to have in this application.
Okay, thank you. So we have Councillor Critch, Councillor Alex Wilson, and then Councillor Clark. So Councillor Critch, please.
I'm not 100% sure I understood the question that the previous speaker was asking, that line of questioning, but it's okay. I think my question is different. If it's not, just let me know. My concern with this motion is only with respect to advice we received from the Integrity Commissioner. The Integrity Commissioner essentially said, if I recall correctly, that Committee of Adjustment type tribunals, or these kinds of tribunals, are independent from council. So they're supposed to make decisions and they're supposed to operate in a manner that's completely independent from our influence. And so in the previous term of council, I know that councillors would show up at the Committee of Adjustment at times to try and do things. This Integrity Commissioner, the one before, I can't recall, said, look, you shouldn't be doing that activity. If you appoint a tribunal full of people, those people are the ones who are supposed to make the decisions, and you want to keep it at arm's length. So I don't engage with the Committee of Adjustment files in any way, shape, or form ever because of the advice that we were given. So is this council making a motion about the decisions of the Committee of Adjustment some kind of a problem in that way? I just don't know the answer to that question. And that's the only thing that makes me uncomfortable about supporting it. I agree that we have, obviously, there's some tension and there's some issues, and we're seeing these things repeatedly come back. I also don't think it's great. I moved a motion earlier in this term of council to ask for us to start moving some Committee of Adjustment decisions here that felt like they were overlapping and weird, and we approved that. So that seemed like it was in order. So can someone maybe just provide that a bit of context there as to whether or not it's okay that we go down this road?
Okay. Perhaps I'll ask Director Del Bello, please.
Through the chair, I will ask legal if they have an opinion with regards to the Integrity Commissioner's response, or
Patrick, back in the hot seat. He's thinking. Give him a minute. Is this legal advice?
Yeah, so through the chair, yeah, I believe that would constitute legal advice that may have to be considered in camera, if that's what we're looking for.
All right.
Apologies.
Thank you. So, Counselor, we'll have to park that, I think. Do you have any other questions?
No, my only question was whether or not it was okay for us to go down this road, and maybe we ought to just defer this till after closed if we can get some advice. I'm not sure if that's appropriate to do, but I'll leave it there. That's my only reservation at this point.
Okay, all right. So we'll continue on with the speakers list. Counselor Alex Wilson, please.
Thank you. My understanding of the motion is it's asking staff to conduct a policy review based on a couple of years of data points. So I'm fine. It's a policy review. So I guess that's my question is, are staff interpreting it the same way? And so my question through you, Chair, is one potential outcome, for example, and maybe this isn't the actual recommendation, but just so I'm making sure I'm understanding what the product is that comes back, is we've had 4 applications that relate to conditions pertaining to water issues and ensuring there's enough room for water. Our recommendation to ensure this would be to happen again would be to create policy directive that says when it comes to the conditions with respect to there being sufficient groundwater recharge area, this is never defined as minor. This is always a major consideration, and therefore it's just not a COA decision anymore, or they no longer have the delegated authority because it's no longer being defined as minor. So that seems to me like a policy definition intervention that could come out of this. That's not a process intervention. That's not about disagreeing with the COA decisions, but it's about, after a policy review, where do we tighten things up? Is that a potential recommendation that could come back, or the style of a recommendation that could come back potentially from staff, or some thoughts on staff as to what their product would be coming back?
Director Fayback, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, my read of the motion is more of a factual request for information. So how many instances has, staff recommended a denial and the committee has supported it? How many times have conditions not been included? That sort of information in terms of a response back and looking at what circumstances triggered staff to file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal. What were those specific instances? So that's that's my read of the motion in terms of responding and reporting back with factual information.
And through you, Chair, just with respect, I understand that for Part A, with respect to Part B, which is asking staff to make recommendations resulting from this data set, I think that's just the bit where I'm trying to understand what types of recommendations might come back. Does that need to be cleaned up? I'm very supportive of the direction, I think, where the mover is trying to get. What I think could come out of this, based on some of the questions from other councillors, I'm just wondering if we need to maybe be a little bit tighter on outcomes or make sure we're all on the same page there. But from how I understand this, I'm quite supportive, and just maybe wondering if staff have comments on, with respect to Part B, which mentions recommendations, what types of recommendations might come back. Obviously, the review hasn't been done.
Director Fayback, please.
Through the chair to the councillor, my apologies, I didn't speak to that part. My initial thought, without doing the analysis, would be, is there increased clarity that could be provided within the staff comments? Is there situations where perhaps staff across the organization that are providing comments on Committee of Adjustment attend the Committee of Adjustment meetings to be able to speak to their comments, to sort of emphasize the importance of their comments or the conditions? There's a possibility to perhaps do a refresher session with the Committee of Adjustment with the Committee of Adjustment members to review our policies and why we frame our comments the way we do. Why do we recommend denial in some instances and support in others? So that's sort of what I was thinking in terms of what are some possible outcomes.
Through you, Chair, really appreciate that answer, supportive of the motion, and looking forward to staff's report back when it comes forward and what those recommendations might be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark, please.
The only question that I have is if the report's going to show how many times we chose to intervene, will the report also show how many times there were decisions that were no challenges from the city? So will it be a comprehensive list, is what I'm asking.
Through the chair to the councillor, yes. I would say that part of this data, I would say, would have to be those instances where staff, for example, recommended denial, the committee did not go with staff's recommendation and supported it, and staff, there was no appeal filed.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers to this? Welcome back, Councillor Taddison. So Councillor Taddison, we are on the motions currently, and it is the Committee of Adjustment Decisions Review motion. So seeing as there are no other speakers, may I have your electronic vote, please? Councillor Nan's a thumbs up. Vote is up. Councillor Taddison's a thumbs up. And that vote carries 10-0. Thank you. We are now moving on. It is now noon-ish, 12:04. We do only have private and confidential, which will go to speak on 12.2, sorry. And then so just giving the roadmap, we are going to receive the closed session minutes. We'll go into closed for 12.2/7.2. And then come out and then receive the information report of 7.2 before we adjourn. So are we okay to continue plowing this forward? Councillor Cassar? Yeah, we're good, okay. Just double checking. Okay, all right, excellent. So we are going to 12.1 now. Please have a mover and a seconder to adopt the January 14th, 2025 closed session minutes and remain confidential. Councillor Beattie, Councillor Cassar, show of hands, please. Everyone is good. Everyone says yes. Okay. So now we will be moving into closed session, and this is to discuss 12.2. I read this out earlier. Do I still need to read this out again? I'll read it out again. Okay. All right, so now we are moving into closed session. I do need a mover and a seconder to move into closed session for item 12.2 pursuant to section 9.3 subsections E and F of the city's procedural bylaw 21-021 as amended, and section 2392 subsections E and F of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject pertains to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Cassar, Councillor Taddison. And show of hands, please. And that looks like Councillor Crutch is saying yes. And that's everyone. Thank you. All right, members of the public, the meeting will continue following the closed session portion of the meeting. When you see members of committee rejoining the meeting, the committee will wait up to 5 minutes upon reconvening in open session before proceeding with the meeting to provide members of the public and the media time to return. Thank you. All right, we're back. Thank you. Now we are back to speaking about 7.2, which is the LS 24014 appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lands located at 1065 Paramount Drive, Stony Creek for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments, ZAC 23-006 in Ward 9. So may I have a mover and a seconder to approve A, that report LS 24014A respecting appeals to the Land Tribunal, lands located at 1065 Paramount Drive for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to be received, and that B, that the confidential appendix A to report LS 24014A remain confidential. Councillor Beattie and Councillor Kassar, speakers, please. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the latitude to attend the meeting today and provide some comments and ask some questions in camera on the report. First, I do want to thank our legal staff as well as our planning staff for working with me on this process of having two separate reports, one that would be public and one that would be in camera. I want to thank our staff that did the original review on this file. They came to the determination that they could not support this, not because of anything that the public was doing, but because of their assessment on the merits of the application. And they deserve recognition for that. They did an excellent job. In terms of the process after that and the residents, you know, I've never had a planning application in all my time on council where 6,500 people signed a petition. You don't usually get big numbers like that. So it was a big concern in this community. And when the decision did not go our way at the OLT, I thought it was prudent and wise to ask this body, this committee, and council to have our staff review the decision and to explore if there was any possibility, any errors in law, any errors in procedure that we could utilize to go to either a request for a review by the chair of the Ontario Lands Tribunal or a judicial review by a judge in Ontario. Unfortunately, the reviews have come back and they're very clear that we could not find those points in law that we could successfully appeal. People need to understand that when we're requesting a judicial review, we just don't get to go into a courtroom and fight for the position that we're taking. We need to apply through a motion to divisional court, and they get to determine whether or not the points of evidence that we have provided meets the test. The test and the threshold for a judicial review is very high. I can't recall in my public life any judicial review of a planning decision. It's just almost impossible given the process. Notwithstanding that, I felt it was important that we do this. I think it's something the planning committee should consider from time to time on those very controversial planning decisions that we have to make as a body. And if the OLT goes against us, let's just make sure that we have not missed anything. And so I am very grateful to our legal team for the work that they did. And like I said, again, it was a very innovative process. We don't usually do business this way. We usually have a report that goes in camera and nothing is ever said in public. This way, because of the compelling public interest in this application, there was a public report that the public can view and understand very, very easily. And so that's all of my remarks. I just really want to thank all the volunteers, all the people who spent all those hours going out and talking to people, and our staff. God bless them. They had to review everything that was coming in and then interpret it and put it into a file, and they came to the decision. I do not agree with the Ontario Land Tribunal's decision, but we don't have the evidence that would support a review or a request for judicial review. and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Are there any other comments, questions that committee would like to bring up at this time? Okay. Seeing none, and because this is an information report and there is no decision to be made, I think we can just take a vote by hands. Yes. May I have your vote, please? Yes, we had Councillor Beatty and Councillor Kassar, and it looks like everyone has their hand up, so that vote carries. And now, on to the most exciting part of our meeting, adjournment. Since there are no further business, we are adjourned at 12:27. Thank you very much, committee. Have a great rest of your day.